"Hush, Buster, you'll wake the dead," I hissed. But the little terrier mix just clawed at the back door, his barking frantic, tearing through the midnight silence of the Fringelands. It wasn't his usual stray raccoon bark, or even the wandering rogue bark that made my blood run cold. This was a sound of pure, unadulterated terror, a frantic, desperate rhythm that rattled the thin windows of my shack. It was a sound that said death was outside, scratching to get in. Cursing, my heart hammering against my ribs so hard it hurt, I grabbed the heavy iron poker from the cold fireplace, my one concession to defense. It was heavy in my hand, but offered little comfort. My palms were slick with a cold sweat. In the Fringe, the dumping ground for the Pack's unwanted, a sound like that at midnight usually meant one thing: rogues, or worse, the Pack enforcers, coming to cleanse the territory of the weak. And I, Elara, was the lowest of the low. A null scent, a shifter who couldn't shift, a waste of territory, a ghost even among the outcasts. To be a null was to be invisible, untouchable, a void where a person should be. My own parents had left me here when I was 10, their eyes sliding off me, their senses unable to register me as Pack. I was an absence, a mistake. I shoved open the door, bracing against the sheeting rain that blasted me in the face, instantly soaking my thin tunic. The world was awash of gray and black, and then the smell hit me. The metallic tang of blood, thick and suffocating, instantly silencing my dog. It overwhelmed the smell of the mud, the wet pines, the rot. This was alpha blood, powerful blood. The air crackled with it like lightning trapped in a jar. There, collapsed in my muddy, half-dead turnip patch, was a man. Not just any man. The scent of ozone, ancient pines, and absolute authority rolled off him in waves, even as dark, dark blood pooled from a jagged wound in his side. Kalen, the Alpha King. And he was dying in my backyard. Wait, before the next revelation unfold. If this mystery has already captivated you, let us know where you're following this story from. To ensure you don't miss unexpected claims, broken bonds, or awakenings under the moon, subscribe and stay close. Now, back to the scene. My breath hitched, stinging in my lungs. This was impossible. This was a nightmare. The Alpha King didn't come to the Fringelands. He didn't even look at the Fringelands during the humiliating annual levees, where he'd ride on his massive black warhorse, his silver-plated armor gleaming, his gaze fixed forward, as if looking at us, the broken, the Omegas, the Nulls, would infect him. We were the dirt under the Pack's claws, and I was the dirt under the dirt. And the king, a creature of myth and terror, a being so far above me he was practically a god, was bleeding out on my doorstep. Buster, now silent, crept forward on his belly, whining, his nose twitching. He lapped nervously at the rain-diluted blood. "No, Buster, get back! That's poison!" I shrieked, yanking him back by his scruff. I didn't know how I knew, but the air sizzled around the wound, a faint black steam rising where the rain hit his skin. It smelled like burned metal and something rotten. The man, the king, groaned, a sound that seemed to shake the very ground, a rumble of agony that vibrated in my bones and rattled the loose tin of my roof. His enemies, the ones who had done this, could they be far behind? My first instinct, the instinct of the Fringe, screamed at me, run, slam the door, bar it, douse the lamp, and pretend I'd seen nothing. This was not my problem. This was a problem for alphas, for lords and ladies, for people who mattered. Harboring a rogue was a death sentence. Harboring the king? If his enemies found him here, I'd be dead. If his guards found him here, they'd assume I was the assassin and kill me anyway. He was a dead man, and he was going to take me with him. I had survived this long by being invisible. This was the opposite of invisible. But then he moved. His head, heavy with a crown of sweat-matted dark hair, turned in the mud. His eyes, rumored to be the color of winter ice, fluttered open. They were slitted, feral, his pupils blown wide, glowing faintly in the dark. They locked on me. He didn't see a girl. He saw a threat. I dropped the poker. It splashed in the mud. I won't hurt you," I stammered, raising my hands, palms out. "I'm not them." His lips peeled back from his teeth in a snarl that was half agony, half command. "Inside," he grated, the single word a testament to a will that refused to break. Inside? He wanted inside? My shack was barely a shack. It was salvaged tin and rotting wood, a single room that was never warm, but it was dry. Dragging him was impossible. He was a mountain of solid muscle, and I was perpetually underfed, all sharp angles and shaky limbs. "You have to help me," I pleaded, tears of panic blurring my vision. I can't lift you. You're too heavy." He tried to push himself up, his arms shaking violently. He roared in frustration as his muscles failed him, and he collapsed back into the mud with a sickening splash. The wound in his side, I could see it clearly now. It wasn't just a blade wound. The edges were blackened, sizzling even in the rain, like acid on meat. It was poisoned. Silver-laced wolfsbane, I realized with a cold dread. A poison designed to kill an alpha, slow and agonizing, burning them from the inside out, while the silver kept them from shifting to heal. "Please," he whispered, the authority cracking, the command gone, replaced by a raw human desperation that broke something deep inside me. I looped my thin arms under his, my face pressed against his rain-soaked, leather-clad chest. He was burning hot, a furnace of fever. On 3, I gasped, my own muscles screaming in protest. 1, 2, 3. With a shared grunt of agony, we stumbled through the doorway. He was a dead weight, his feet dragging, carving furrows in my floor. He collapsed onto my cot, the rope straining, the flimsy frame groaning. His sheer weight nearly broke it. The shack, my only sanctuary, instantly felt too small, suffocating. His scent, even tainted by blood and poison and death, filled every corner, an overwhelming presence that chased away the familiar, comforting smell of wood smoke and poverty. It was the scent of power, and it terrified me. He was shivering violently, his body at war with itself. The poison was forcing a shift, his bones seeming to grate against each other, his shoulders broadening, then snapping back, but the silver was preventing it. He was trapped between man and wolf, and the conflict was tearing him apart. "Water," he rasped, his eyes closing, his face pale as death under the mud. I ran to my basin, my hands shaking so hard I spilled half the precious clean water. I held the tin cup to his lips. He drank greedily, his hand clamping around my wrist. It wasn't a gentle grip. It was a vice, a manacle of burning hot skin that made me cry out. His eyes snapped open, blurry, unfocused, but staring into me. "Who?" he demanded, his voice a broken growl. "Ilara, I live here." My voice was a squeak. "They poisoned the blade." He was fading, his grip loosening, his head falling back. "Lord, Valerius, he did this. The pact, broken." His eyes rolled back. "No, no, no," I panicked. "Stay awake. You have to stay awake." I looked around my tiny, bare room. I had nothing. No pack healers, no elixirs. All I had were the fringe remedies my grandmother had taught me before she died. willow bark for fever, moss for wounds. This was beyond moss. Buster, who had crept in, whined from the corner, his small body trembling. "You have to fight," I whispered, grabbing an old towel and pressing it against the wound. He roared, a sound that was half wolf, and his hand shot out, grabbing a fistful of my tunic, hauling me down until my face was inches from his. I was airborne for a second, then slammed down, my knees hitting the hard-packed dirt floor. His eyes were no longer human. They were molten gold, the pupils blown wide with feral agony. He inhaled, his nose pressing against the pulse point in my neck. I froze, my life literally in his hands. He could snap my neck in an instant. He shuddered, a deep, rattling breath. "You," he whispered, the sound a low growl of confusion. "You smell of nothing." I flinched. The ultimate insult. The story of my life. Null scent. "Please, Your Majesty, you're bleeding." "The poison," he gasped, pushing me away so hard I fell back on my haunches. "It's burning." I looked at the wound. The black veins were visible even in the lamplight, spreading like spiders, crawling up his ribs, past his heart. He didn't have hours. He had minutes. I was a null scent, useless, unworthy, a ghost. But my grandmother, what had she said all those years ago, her voice as thin as paper? "Don't let them call you null, child. You are not empty. You are balance. What burns, cools. What poisons, soothes. The balance is in the blood, Ilara, even ours." It was madness, a desperate, insane gamble, the half-remembered words of an old woman. But he was dying. "I don't have anything," I whispered, my eyes stinging with terrified tears. "I don't have any medicine. All I have is me." Before he could protest, before I could lose my nerve, I grabbed the small, sharp knife I used for skinning rabbits. I made a fist, and with a short, sharp slice, I opened my own palm. Blood, dark and thin, welled up. His eyes widened, confused. He was the king, but in that moment, he was just a dying man. "I'm sorry," I sobbed, and I lunged forward, pressing my bleeding hand directly onto the sizzling, poisoned wound. I expected to be burned. I expected him to scream. What happened was silence. A sudden, profound, total silence, as if the entire world had held its breath. The rain stopped lashing the roof. The wind died. The moment my blood touched his, the sizzling stopped. The scent of ozone vanished, replaced by something new. The smell of rain-soaked earth and, impossibly, lilacs. My scent, a scent I had never even been able to smell. Kalen inhaled, a sharp, sudden gasp. His body arched off the cot, a true agonized scream tearing from his throat. His eyes locked with mine. The gold was searing, but the feral rage was gone, replaced by a shocking, terrifying clarity. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking into me. A jolt like lightning passed between us. It wasn't a feeling. It was a vision. I saw images, a forest of towering black pines, a silver throne room, a bloody battle against rogues, a woman's face, cold and beautiful, sneering at him. And I felt a wave of his pain, his crushing loneliness, his absolute bone-deep fury, and beneath it all, a crushing weight of duty. And then he spoke the word that shattered my world. Mate. He said it not in delirium, not in passion, but in a guttural shock. He stared at my bleeding hand, then at my face, And his expression wasn't one of joy. It was one of pure, unadulterated horror. "No," he whispered, shaking his head, his face ashen. "It's not possible. He was the Alpha King. He was betrothed, I'd heard. Every fringe dweller knew. To Lady Seraphina of the Stoneclaw Pack, a political alliance that would end a centuries-old feud. He was supposed to mate her, not me, not the Omega trash, not the null scent from the fringe. He tried to push me away, to shove my hand off his body. 'Get off me,' he snarled. But the poison, which had receded, flooded back the instant our contact broke. He gasped, clutching his side, the black veins reappearing, more virulent this time. 'What
Are you?' he growled, his gaze filled with suspicion and a new, desperate fear. Imalera. You're more than that,' he snarled. He grabbed my wrist, his grip painfully tight, and pulled my bleeding hand back to his wound. Instantly he sighed, the tension leaving his body as my blood neutralized the poison. I stood there, bound to him, a human poultice, my blood dripping onto the king, while my entire, small, miserable life crumbled around me. We stayed like that for hours. Me, standing, trembling, my arm growing numb. Him, slipping in and out of consciousness, his iron grip on my wrist the only thing keeping him alive. I was trapped. If I pulled away, he died. If I stayed, what happened when the sun came up? What happened when the king woke up and realized what he'd done? Dawn broke gray and cold, seeping through the cracks in the walls. His fever had broken, but he was weak, his skin clammy. His breathing was even, the wound no longer sizzling. It was still a horrific gash, but it was just a gash. My blood had worked. I was dizzy from the loss, my palm throbbing, my entire arm ached from the tension. He woke slowly, not like before. This time, his eyes were clear. The winter ice was back. He was the king again. He looked at our joined hands, my bloody, filthy palm still pressed to his skin, and his lip curled in disgust. He let me go, shoved my hand away. I stumbled back, clutching my bleeding hand to my chest. The poison didn't return. The immediate threat was gone. My blood had, at least temporarily, neutralized it. He sat up, his movements stiff. He was regal, even in a mud-caked, blood-soaked tunic, sitting on a broken cot in a shack that smelled of turnips and fear. "You will not speak of what happened here," he commanded. His voice was cold, a whip crack of authority that left no room for argument. You will not speak of the bond. It was a fever dream, a hallucination from the poison. It means nothing." "But I saved you," I whispered, the injustice of it stinging more than my cut palm. You called me. "I called you nothing," he snapped. "You did your duty to your king," he said dismissively, standing up. He towered over me, a god in a garbage heap. He swayed, still weak, but his pride held him upright. "Your service will be noted." He was rejecting me, after what I'd done, after he'd called me mate. The bond, which I could feel thrumming between us like a hot wire, recoiled as if doused in ice water. The pain was physical, a sharp, cold stabbing in my chest. A cold, unfamiliar rage, something I hadn't known I possessed, rose up. "Noted?" I said, my voice shaking. "I am noted. You were dying." His eyes flashed, a dangerous Arctic blue. "Do not," he warned, "test my patience, Omega." He spat the word like a curse, and that broke me. I wasn't a hero. I wasn't a mate.
I was just the Omega who happened to be in the way. The Null who had, by some freak accident, been useful. "You're right, Your Majesty," I said, my voice dead, all the fight draining out of me. "I'm just the Omega. Forget what you saw. Forget the mate." He studied me, his icy gaze analytical. He was already calculating, the politician, the king. "You are a complication," he stated. "The poison is still in my blood. I can feel it, lying dormant. Your anomaly is the only reason I am standing. Lord Valerius will try again. He will not expect me to have an antidote." My heart stopped. "Antidote?" He grabbed my arm, his grip hard, impersonal. He dragged me toward the door, ignoring my cry of pain. "You are not a mate. You are a weapon, and you belong to me." He pulled me out into the gray morning. "You are coming with me." "What? No, I can't leave. My shack, Buster." My dog, sensing the tension, was growling by the fireplace. Kalen didn't even look at the dog. "You have nothing here. Your life as Ilara is over. You are now my physician." He sneered at the title, "my leech." "And if I refuse?" I tried to yank my arm back, but it was like pulling against an oak tree. He turned, his face so close I could feel the cold radiating from him. "If you refuse, you are a rogue who attacked her king. My guards are, by now, sweeping the fringe, searching for me. They will find you, and I will have you executed for treason. Your shack will be cinders by noon." It wasn't a choice. It was a sentence. "Buster comes with me," I said, the one piece of defiance I had left. Kalen looked at the scruffy terrier. A muscle in his jaw ticked. "Fine," he bit out. "Grab your rat. We leave now." The journey to the palace was a new kind of humiliation. He didn't take me through the woods. He marched me down the fringe's main, muddy track, right as the other outcasts were emerging. They saw me, held by the king, and their faces, normally pinched with hunger, were now twisted in fear and contempt. They thought I was a traitor. They thought I'd brought the king here. I was an outcast among outcasts. Mrs. Grem, who sometimes traded me bread for herbs, spat at my feet. "Traitorous Null," she hissed. Kalen ignored her. He ignored all of them. He just marched forward, pulling me along by the wrist as if I were a misbehaving dog. His guards found us at the edge of the woods, a dozen of them, clad in black and silver. Their relief at seeing him alive was instantly replaced with open suspicion as they looked at me. "Your Majesty, you are wounded," the captain, a grim-faced man named Marius, said, his eyes on me. "Was it her?" "She is an asset," Kalen said, his voice flat. "This Omega is my new personal attendant. She is not to be spoken to. She is not to be touched. She is to be housed in the lower levels. See to it." He didn't ride with me. I was thrown in a supply wagon with Buster, who I hid under my cloak. I jolted for miles, smelling of hay and horse, while he rode at the head of the column, a king once more. The palace was a shock. It wasn't a home. It was a fortress of cold, polished stone and colder, polished people. I wasn't taken to the healer's wing. I was taken via a servant's tunnel that smelled of old grease and rats to a small, dark room in the dungeons next to the kitchens. It was stone, all stone, with a high, barred window I couldn't reach. A thin, lumpy straw mattress lay on a stone slab. This was my new home. "You will stay here," Marius told me, his face impassive. "Food will be brought. You will not speak to anyone. You will not leave this room. The king will summon you when he needs a treatment." Buster whined, digging at the stone floor.
I sank onto the mattress. I had gone from my own poor shack to a luxurious prison cell. At least here, the wind didn't blow through the walls. That night, the summons came. Kalen was in his private study, a room larger than my entire village. A fire roared, but the room was cold. He was slouched at his desk, a map spread before him, his face pale and tight with pain. He didn't look at me when I entered. "The wound," he said, his voice strained. "It's burning again." I approached, my knife in my hand. He held out his arm, not even offering the wound. He wouldn't show that weakness. He wouldn't let me touch his side. He wanted my blood, but he wouldn't show the wound it was for. I knelt, a servant. I sliced my palm. The old cut reopened. He watched, his eyes unreadable. I pressed my bleeding hand to his forearm, to the thick blue veins. He hissed, a sound of relief. The tension drained from his shoulders. He closed his eyes, his breathing deepening. We stayed like that for a long time, the only sound the crackling of the fire and Buster's soft breathing from the hallway where Marius held his leash. "Valerius was at the council meeting today," Kalen said, his eyes still closed. "He offered his condolences for my illness. The snake. He said the Fringelands must be infested with disease." You let him? I am planning a war, Omega. One cannot spook the rabbit until the snare is set. He opened his eyes, the ice back. "And you are my snare." This became our routine. Days of isolation in the dungeon where kitchen scraps were shoved through a slot in the door. Sometimes I recognized the cook, a gruff Omega who would slip in an extra piece of fruit, her eyes full of pity. Nights of silent, agonizing intimacy in his study. I kneeling at his feet, bleeding for him. He drawing strength from me, his gaze fixed on the maps of his kingdom, his face a mask of stone. He never called me Alara. It was Omega or you. The bond, the one he denied, throbbed between us. It was a sick, twisted thing. I felt his pain, his exhaustion, his fury at Valerius. And I think he felt my loneliness. Sometimes, when he thought I wasn't looking, I'd see him watching me, a look of profound confusion on his face, mixed with a deep, unsettling resentment, as if I was the poison, not the cure. One night, he was in more pain than usual. The poison was flaring, and he was restless, pacing the study. He had snapped at Marius, and the air in the room was electric with his contained rage. "Give it to me," he commanded, holding out his arm. I sliced my palm, the star tissue thick and white. He flinched as I pressed my hand to his arm. It's not working as fast," I whispered, terrified. "It's adapting," he growled, his hand clamping over mine, pressing it harder against his skin. He must be using a new variation. He looked at me, his eyes desperate. "I need more." He grabbed my other arm, the knife still in my hand. He guided it to my other unscarred palm. "More," he commanded. I cried out as the blade bit deep, but he didn't care. He seized my new bleeding hand and pressed it to his other arm, holding me there, a captive, feeding him my life. You're a vampire," I sobbed, dizzy. His head snapped up. The feral gold was back in his eyes. He looked at me, at the tears on my face, at the blood dripping onto his expensive rug. He looked ashamed. For a single second. Then the mask was back. "You are what I need," he said, his voice cold. He let go. "Go, before you faint." Marius had to help me back to my cell, half carrying me. He didn't speak, but he left an extra piece of bread and a wedge of cheese by my cot. The next day, she arrived. Lady Seraphina of the Stoneclaw. She didn't just walk into the castle, she conquered it. She was everything I wasn't. Tall, blonde, with the proud, arrogant bearing of her Stoneclaw heritage. Her scent was sharp, like winter air and roses, an alpha scent so strong it made my null scent feel even more like a void. She was beautiful, and she was a true alpha. She swept into the castle, and the entire dynamic shifted. The guards stood straighter, the servants bowed lower. Kaelin, for the first time, looked stressed, trapped. That night, I was summoned to the study. When I entered, Seraphina was there. She was draped over Kaelin's chair, her hand on his shoulder. She looked at me, her eyes raking over my fringe filth, my cheap linen dress, a cast-off from the kitchens. Kaelin, this is the new kitchen wench? She smells of nothing, and of dog. Buster, who I'd snuck under my cloak, growled. Kaelin's face was stone. She is a servant, of no importance. Leave us. Then send her away, Seraphina said, walking over to him, placing a proprietary hand on his chest. We have matters to discuss. Not yet. Kaelin's voice was tight. He was in pain. I could feel it radiating off him, a low, thrumming burn under his skin. The poison was active. He needed me. Seraphina saw his pallor. You are unwell, my love. The journey has taxed you. I am fine, he gritted out. This is her, Seraphina said suddenly, her eyes narrowing. She wasn't talking to Kaelin. She was talking to herself. She stalked over to me, faster than I could react, grabbing my chin, her sharp nails digging in. She sniffed me, her nose wrinkling in disgust. This is the scent Valerius spoke of, the one that lingers on you, the antidote. He said you'd found some creature. Seraphina, Kaelin warned, standing up. This is not your concern. Not my concern, she laughed, a cold, sharp sound. You, my betrothed, are hiding a thing in the dungeons. You reek of her. You brought this nothing into the castle, and you hide her like a dirty secret. She looked at my hand, which I'd instinctively covered. She ripped it up, her grip impossibly strong. She saw the fresh, red lines of the night's treatment, the puckered, angry scar tissue. You're bleeding her? Seraphina looked disgusted, then horrified. Her eyes flew to Kaelin's. Kaelin, the bond, the mating bond. You wouldn't, with this? Kaelin's control snapped. Enough, he roared, his alpha voice shaking the room, making the glass in the windows rattle. You overstep, lady. I overstep, she screeched, her own alpha presence rising to meet his, a clash of invisible power that made me feel small as an ant. You are bound to me. The treaty is signed. Our mating is in 2 days, and you are here playing games with some filth? She turned to me, her eyes promising murder. He is mine, little Omega. Whatever dark magic you used to snare him, I will undo. And then I will personally flay the skin from your bones. She stormed out, slamming the door so hard a book fell off a shelf. I was shaking, my blood running cold. Kaelin sank back into his chair, rubbing his temples. He was trapped. She's right, I whispered. The mating? It is a political necessity, he said, his voice flat. The Stoneclaw Alliance will save thousands of lives. And what about us? The word slipped out, treacherous, hopeful. His head snapped up. His eyes were arctic. There is no us. There is a king, and there is a tool. The wedding will proceed. Valerius will attend. He will feel safe. And at the ceremony, when the alliance is sealed, I will expose him. You will be my proof. Proof? When he sees you, he will know his poison has failed. He will act, and my guards will be ready. I wasn't a weapon. I wasn't a tool. I was bait. And after? I asked, my voice hollow. After you've exposed him and married her, what happens to me? Kalen looked away. He couldn't meet my eyes. He stared at a map. You will be provided for. A quiet life, far from here. He was exiling me. The bond, the one he denied, flared in my chest. It wasn't just pain. It was betrayal. A raw, screaming, gaping wound. I had saved his life. I had bled for him. I had endured his prison and his contempt. I had let him mark my skin night after night. And now he was casting me aside for a woman who despised him? No, I said. He looked up, surprised by the steel in my voice. No? I won't do it. I won't be your bait. I won't be your quiet life. I backed away, my hand on the doorknob. You're the king. You want to save your kingdom? Save it yourself. Find another antidote. Find another leech. You are my subject, he growled, standing. You will obey me. Or what? I shot back, tears of pure rage streaming down my face. You'll execute me? You might as well. It's better than this. You say the bond is a fever dream? Fine. Then let me go. Let me go and die from your poison, because I am done bleeding for a man who hates me. Buster, sensing my distress, ran out from under my cloak, a tiny, scruffy blur of fury, and bit the king on the ankle. It was so shocking, so absurd, that we both froze. Kalen looked down at the tiny terrier hanging off his expensive boot, then at me. And, for the first time, the ice in his eyes didn't just crack, it melted. He saw me, really saw me. Not the Omega, not the antidote, Ilara. He started, his voice rough. The door burst open. It wasn't Marius. It was Lord Valerius, flanked by 2 of his personal guards. "Your Majesty," Valerius said, a cruel smile on his face. "Lady Seraphina was distressed. She said you were being coerced by this creature." He pointed at me. "She sent me to remove the problem." Kalen moved, shoving me behind him so hard I stumbled. "Valerius, you dare!" "Oh, I dare," Valerius sneered. "I dared in the forest. I dare now." He pulled a dagger, the blade glistening with the same black poison. "You should have died, Kalen. This time, I'll finish the job, and your pet will join you." "Marius!" Kalen roared. But Marius was gone. We were alone. "You can't fight," I whispered, grabbing his arm. "The poison, you're not strong enough." "I am strong enough to protect what is mine," he snarled. He met their charge. He was the king, and he was magnificent. He moved with a speed I didn't think possible, but he was weak. One guard slammed him against the desk, sending maps flying. Kalen roared, throwing him off, but the other lunged at me. Buster flew at him, a furry 4-pound demon, but the guard kicked him aside. My dog yelped, a high-pitched sound of pain, and hit the wall with a sickening thud. Something in me snapped. The null scent, the nothing, the rage. The guard raised his sword, laughing. "Time to die, little leech." I didn't think. I acted. I didn't just grab a book. I grabbed the solid iron poker from the fireplace. The guard raised his sword. I screamed, a sound that didn't come from me. It came from the earth,
and swung the poker with all my might at the man's head. It connected with a sickening crack. The man dropped like a sack of stones. Valerius, who had Cailan pinned against the wall, the poisoned dagger at his throat, stared in shock. What? That second was all Cailan needed. He exploded upward, not as a man, but as an alpha. He didn't shift, but the power he released, the raw dominance, threw Valerius across the room. "You touched her!" Cailan roared, his voice distorted, half-wolf. He stalked toward Valerius, who was scrambling for his dagger. "You tried to poison my land, my council, and my mate!" Valerius's eyes went wide. "Mate? The Omega? You're insane!" "Am I?" Cailan picked up the poisoned dagger. He looked at me, over the body of the guard I'd felled. I was trembling, the poker still in my hand, Buster whimpering at my feet. Cailan's eyes were blazing, not with ice, but with a fire that warmed me to the bone. "Ilara." He said my name. "I was wrong," he said, his voice raw, ragged. "I am a fool, a blind, arrogant fool." "Cailan. I, Cailan, Alpha King, reject nothing. I reject no one. I claim." He turned to Valerius. "The alliance with Stoneclaw is void. Seraphina can marry a rock for all I care. This," he said, gesturing to me with the poker, "is my queen." Valerius laughed, a gurgling sound as he tried to get to his feet. "You've sealed your doom, boy. The Council will never accept an Omega, a null. They will tear you apart. Stoneclaw will declare war." "They will accept their queen," Cailan said. He walked over to me, ignoring the bleeding traitor on the floor. He dropped to one knee, in front of the enemy, in front of the open door where the entire castle could now see. He took my hand, the one with the scars. He kissed the scarred palm. "Ilara of the Fringe, my antidote, my life, my heart. You saved me in the mud. Will you save me now? Be my queen." I looked at this impossible man, this arrogant, broken, magnificent king. I looked at my dog, who was whimpering and licking my ankle. I looked at the guard I'd just knocked unconscious. My life was already over. This new one, it was terrifying. But as I looked at Cailan, at the man kneeling in the ruins of his study, I didn't feel the bond as a chain. I felt it as an anchor. "I am not a queen," I whispered. "I'm just Ilara." "You are my Ilara," he said, "and you are my everything." I dropped the poker. It clanged on the stone. I pulled him to his feet. "Then get up, Your Majesty. We have a traitor to imprison." Cailan grinned, a true, brilliant smile that lit up his whole face. "As my queen commands." The aftermath was chaos. Guards, loyal ones, finally arrived, led by a shamed-faced Marius, who said he'd been decoyed by a false fire alarm. Valerius was dragged to the dungeons, screaming about treaties and Omegas. Lady Seraphina, upon hearing that Cailan had not only broken the betrothal but claimed me, shrieked, broke a priceless vase, and was summarily escorted back to Stoneclaw lands, breathing threats of war. The kingdom was confused. The council was furious. An Omega Queen? A null sent? It was unheard of. It was a disgrace. We stood before them in the great hall, Cailan's hand linked with mine, he in his royal finery, me in a borrowed servant's dress, the best they could find, with Buster cradled in my arm. He had 3 stitches over his eye, courtesy of the castle healer. "She is my mate," Cailan announced, his voice echoing off the stone. "The moon goddess has chosen. She is my antidote. She saved my life when my own council tried to take it. She is a nothing, one old grizzled alpha, Lord Vorlog, shouted. She has no pack, no power. She will give you weak heirs. She smells of nothing. She has my power, Kalen said, his voice dropping dangerously. And she is stronger than any of you. She faced down Valerius with nothing but a book and a dog. It was a poker, I corrected him, my voice small but clear. The hall quieted. Kalen shot me a look, a tiny smile playing on his lips. With a poker and a dog. I blushed. Buster licked my chin. My bloodline, it's not a null, I said, stepping forward. The alphas bristled. An omega speaking. My grandmother, she called us dampeners. We balance. The council stared. The legend of the dampeners was ancient history, a myth of omegas who could neutralize alpha rage, heal the unhealable, and see the truth. A line thought wiped out centuries ago. A convenient story, Vorlog sneered. A fringe dweller's fairy tale. Is it? I asked. I focused on him, on the rage rolling off him in red, choking waves. I let the nothing in me expand, the cool, quiet balance. I didn't fight his rage. I absorbed it. Vorlog's face went from puce to pale. He stumbled, gasping, as his own fury was suddenly gone. He looked around, bewildered, like a man who had forgotten why he'd entered a room. The hall went silent. It doesn't matter, Kalen said, pulling me closer, his voice soft with pride. She is mine. I am hers. We are one. The bond is sealed. You will accept her as you accept me, or you will find yourselves on the outside of my protection. It was a declaration of war and a promise of love all in one. It wasn't easy. The first year was harder than any day I'd spent in the fringe. The Stoneclaw Pack did, in fact, threaten war. They massed on the northern border. Kalen prepared his armies, but I asked him to let me go first. Alone? Had raged. To Seraphina? She'll kill you. She won't, I said. She's an alpha. She's proud. But she's not stupid. And she's not Valerius. I met her in a wind-blasted tent on the border. Just me, her, and Buster, who she eyed with disgust. You came alone? She'd sneered. To beg for your traitor king? To balance, I said. I told her what Valerius had done. I told her about the poison. I told her how he had used her betrothal as a shield. He would have married you, I said, meeting her cold eyes. He would have done his duty, and he would have been a cold, miserable, dutiful husband. And you, Lady Seraphina, would have been chained to a man who was bonded to another. He is bonded to you, she hissed. Yes, against his will, against his plans, but he is. You deserve a mate who claims you, Seraphina, I said, not one who is sentenced to you. She had stared at me for a long time. Then she'd laughed. You're a strange omega, Ilara, but you're not wrong. The war was averted. I had to learn to read state papers, to rule, to walk in stupid-heeled shoes. I had to learn to command alphas who thought I was dirt. But Kalen learned too. He learned to listen. He learned that my balance wasn't just for poison, it was for his temper. He learned that my fringe remedies were often wiser than his healer's complex potions. He learned that a shack with love was more of a home than his cold stone palace. We rebuilt my shack in the palace gardens, a perfect tiny replica. It's where we go when the council is too loud, when the crowns are too heavy. Buster, of course, sleeps on a silk pillow at the foot of the royal bed. He is, officially, the first dog, and has his own guard who he torments daily. Tonight, the moon is full. It floods the garden, silvering the leaves of the turnip batch I insisted on planting outside the shack. Kalen stands behind me, his arms wrapped around my waist, his chin resting on my head. He is no longer the cold king. He is my mate. "The council is still grumbling about your choice of garden," he murmurs, his voice a warm rumble against my back. "Lord Vorlog says it's unbecoming." "Vorlog is lucky I didn't insist on chickens," I reply, leaning back into him. He chuckles, the sound vibrating through me. He turns me in his arms, his eyes no longer ice, but the warm, brilliant blue of a summer sky. "I am the lucky one," he says, his voice thick with an emotion he no longer hides. He traces the scar on my palm, the one that started it all. "You saved me, Elara." I look up at him, the alpha king who found his life in a mud patch, the man who was my terror and became my home. "No, Kalen," I whisper, rising on my toes to kiss him. "We saved each other."